Chamber, Barnsley, Rotherham and Doncaster. And that's basically all of South Yorkshire, all of Sheffield City Region. And we felt that it was important for us to hold an event around diversity and inclusion in business, in particular with the challenging times that we've just seen over the last 12 months. It's been a very difficult year for business anyway, and it's also highlighted issues of diversity as well that we really need to be thinking about. We've seen anti-racism protests around the globe, and we've also seen that COVID-19 has had a disproportionate impact, particularly on Black and minority ethnic community, and the fact that Black people and men of Pakistani and Bangladeshi heritage are twice as likely to die than a white person. So these are all kind of issues that we've faced recently that are all kind of identifying issues around diversity and inclusion. And even on a personal level, I'm mixed heritage. My mum is Jamaican, so my mum came over from Jamaica in the 50s, and my father was English. And so when those statistics came out around COVID and things, I've never really thought about my mum and that side of my family being so vulnerable. So it's really, although COVID-19 didn't create these inequalities, it's held a spotlight to them over the last 12 months. And as business leaders, we want to be responsible, we want to act on diversity and inclusion. We want to try and make sure that, not just around race, but that we are making our communities, our customers, our staff, all our communities as equal and as enjoyable and as healthy as possible around race, disability, around age, LGBTQ, gender, all those different factors. And as business leaders, it's our responsibility to do that. And that's what this event is for. And research does show that businesses that promote diverse and inclusive workplaces are not just more productive, but they're more profitable as well. So that's an interesting piece of research for us to have a chat about later. The focus of the event today is to understand the landscape of diversity and inclusion and the case for change and the practical steps that we can take to make our workplace as productive, as profitable, as healthy and as pleasant as possible. So I'm the first person to acknowledge that some of those conversations, I think, can be really quite awkward. And often you don't want to ask a question because you don't know if even the words that you're going to use are the right words. And you can feel as though you are going to upset somebody or you're going to possibly cause offence. And I'm the first person to acknowledge that. I'm the person who puts a foot in it. And I'm the person who says things like, "Oh, congratulations, I didn't know you were pregnant." Things like that. So I'm here to help the conversation. Please don't feel at any point that you are going to say the wrong thing and allow this to kind of replace your curiosity or willingness to engage in the conversation. This is a safe, honest, open space where we are here to relate to one another, to ask the awkward question if you want to ask it, ask about terminology if you want to, and you will have a very supportive reception. And we've got speakers today that know so much about diversity and inclusion. I'm hoping that we're all going to come away from it feeling empowered and probably a little bit more educated as well. So please don't worry about saying anything. If we all listen, if we're all present, we show empathy and respect and accept the kind of respect the confidentiality of the conversation, then we can make it productive and enjoyable as well. So you should have received an event pack, which is, I love event packs because events like this are great for the hour and a half, but I love to have something to take away with me to actually use at work, where I can say, right, what can we do in our business to take us a step forward? and the event pack has got it's got the agenda, it's got the speakers, bios, so you understand who it is that's talking to you, but there's lots of resources in there and presentations and guidelines and all sorts of pieces of information to help you once you're with your teams as well. So please spend some time afterwards having a look at the event pack. I will just run us quickly through the agenda and then I will pass us over to our first speaker. That's okay. So the agenda is, we will first hear from Sandra Kerr, CBE. Sandra is the Business in the Community and Race Director. We will hear from a panel afterwards, so a panel discussion, and that will include Charlotte Delaney, the Inclusion and Diversity Manager at Irwin Mitchell, Cam Spillman, the co-founder and managing director at Paper, Rachel White, head of HR at Henry Boot, and Sunita Singhal, DWP lead of Mentoring Circles. From there, we will then have a question and answer session. That's your opportunity to ask questions, and the panel will respond and Sandra will respond. If you've got any questions for me, I will respond. Just a basically nice open floor for us to chat about things. And then there will be a survey at the end, which is being collated by Sheffield Hallam University. And that is just some quick questions so that they can take that information away to use. I can't think of anything else to tell you other than do save your questions if you can for the question and answer session, but feel free at any point, if you've got any questions, to put them in the chat box, and I will keep an eye on the chat box and I will raise those questions as well. So if you don't feel like you want to ask those questions yourself, pop them in the chat box. You can do that directly to me, you can do it to everyone, and I will ask those questions on your behalf, which is absolutely fine. And if you're not speaking, if you could keep yourself on mute, that would be absolutely brilliant. So I'm not going to hold us up any longer. It's absolutely wonderful to see everybody here. So thank you again for joining us. And I'd like to introduce Sandra Kerr, please, CBE, Business in the Community Race Director. Over to you, Sandra.
Thank you, Joanna. Delighted to be in Sheffield, although not there. I'm actually in London, but it feels like Sheffield anyway. So great to be here this morning, and really delighted to share some insights with you about race and ethnicity, what's going on more broadly, and then going into the panel. I always say the only silly questions are the ones you don't ask, so do put them in the chat if, as I'm speaking, anything occurs to you as we're going, because we'll try and get to as many of these questions as possible. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to just share some slides, and I'm going to move through them pretty quickly, but don't worry, they are available for you to kind of have and read at leisure post-event. So I'm going to just share the slides with you and kind of talk through the presentation. So Business in the Community, we are almost more than 40 years old, really established to think about responsible business, to ensure that we've got healthy, thriving communities, and part of that is you need healthy, thriving businesses at the heart of those communities. So I want to start talking about some of the here we go. So case for action. So one of the things when we're talking about ethnic diversity, some of you in here might be, I'm going along, but I don't know why we're even discussing this. When you're trying to set a standard in your organization, or get the rationale together, it does matter to explain the why, particularly in ethnicity, because some people do think, why are we even talking about this? I'm going to touch on some things. I think we'll get a chance to talk about terminology, because I know people often, I don't know, I don't want to offend people. And one of the challenges going on at the moment, there's a term BAME, Black, Minority, Ethnic. Government use it, and policymakers and employers have been using. That's kind of falling out of favour since the killing of George Floyd, because people think, oh, they're just using it to not include Black people, to kind of mask the non-inclusion. If we're going to recover and really build back better, it needs to be inclusive. There's 24 billion per annum to be had, and this is through government economists crunching data from the McGregor-Smith review, which was in 2017. And Joe already talked about financial returns. It's 36% better if you have more diversity at board level, and that's a McKinsey study that's been run for 3 years. And also pay differences. I mean, why are they there? We don't know, but if you're a black or white graduate, you're going to start at a lower pay. And that's from some TUC briefings. So real need for action, because it's worth it for all of us. If you think about economic downturn, recovering inclusively, and that 24 billion per annum has to be something that we all want to go after. So I want to talk about the insight. So any data or any insight I share with you comes from the Race at Work survey. So we initially ran it in 2015, biggest survey on race in the workplace, really looking at what's happening to everybody. So it's for everyone. It covers all the census categories: white, other, black, mixed ethnicity, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, everyone, to find out what is going on with people's experience of race at work. And we're actually running it again. So it's going to open again on the 22nd of March. So look out for that link when it arrives. And I'll just do a little plug here. When we ran it initially in 2015, as you can see from Yorkshire and Humber, we had 1,517 responses. So we are going to do special comms and really kind of pushing this out, because we want to hear from different locations so that we can actually produce some regional insight fact sheets that will really help with local data to understand better what's going on with employers in your region. So the Race at Work Charter came out of that Race at Work survey. If you've got any pre-reading, you'll have seen this. This was launched by the Prime Minister in 2018 with 85 companies. And as of yesterday, we've got 612 public sector, private sector, also, across the country, or global, non-global, government departments, a range of sectors have signed up to these 5 commitments of having somebody in leadership at the top table, using data to kind of understand what's going on in the organization, zero tolerance on bullying harassment. I know nobody wants to work for an employer where you feel like, oh, it's just horrible. The 4th one is managers being part of that responsible action, as well as progressing talent. And this is from all data points from the survey, which we'll share as we go along, I think, in the discussion. So some key bits, the killing of George Floyd has turbocharged. So we had about 250 signatories before summer, but it's just kind of exploded following that. We all saw peaceful protests, black and white people outside together saying, no, we don't want this here, we want, a better future. And this report was pulled together really on the responses from the media and also leaders, business leaders saying, what do we do? So what we did, that same Race at Work survey, we ran all the responses from what did black employees tell us. And some of these data points I'm sharing, 31%, when we asked them, would you like a sponsor? So this is kind of similar to a mentor, but a sponsor is even better, because they're the ones that kind of talk about you behind your back in a positive way and open doors for you. When we asked, 31% of black employers said yes to this, compared to 12% of the wider workforce. 33%, this one is when we asked black employees about, well, we asked everyone about what do you think is going to be a career blocker? And ethnicity was one of the questions. 33% of black employees said their ethnicity, compared to only 1% of white employees. So that perception, that belief that actually I'd like to get on, but I think colour's going to get in the way, my ethnicity is going to get in the way. And then 49% was the percentage who said that actually they believe they get credit for their work. And you can't move on in any organisation if you don't get credit for the great ideas that you bring to the table or the work that you do. And then the last one is about, do you want to get on the fast track? So as you can see, huge appetite to actually move forward. So it's not about, oh, lack of drive or they don't want to move on, absolutely do. So I want to flag lots of free resources. So on the BITC website, there are lots of free resources. There's one, Let's Talk About Race booklet. There is, Race at Work Charter signatories. They do a survey every year and they tell us what they're doing. So there's 2 reports that have been run so far. And also we put some fact sheets out with COVID-19 when that hit in April. As soon as they talked about economic downturn, I knew that this was going to have a negative impact on ethnic minority people more than other groups, and gender as well. It's because it's known and it's documented. And we're already seeing some of that hitting the headlines as in regards to job losses and kind of disproportionate impact. And we do some free webinars. We've got one coming up on setting ethnicity targets, got a mental health toolkit to help with mental health disparities. One of the big, and the reason why we're doing that one is in 2014, 29% of Black women reported a common health disorder. That was in 2014, 29%. And that was pre-pandemic. So think about that anyway being a thing. And we know there's never been a big campaign to tackle women's mental health, much less ethnic minority women. So what is going on right now? So this is having a disproportionate impact. So that's why we're putting that toolkit together. And then another exciting thing, so this one's on the, this is kind of being, built as we speak, and it's called the Circle of Opportunity. And what we are doing, we're working, Co-op are leading, we're working with, in collaboration with Co-op to establish a levy sharing platform. So all the unspent levy that employers would usually give back to the government, we're saying create a pool of that levy. And then what you can all do is smaller businesses could apply for, kind of get an apprentice funded, which number one creates opportunities for many jobs that wouldn't exist before. And actually some of the smaller businesses can benefit from some of the smart talent that's available in the unemployment pool at the moment. And this platform though will be designed to ensure people from ethnic minority backgrounds, people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, anybody who's got multiple barriers and finds it harder to get an apprenticeship would actually come to this platform and get one, opposed to it being against you. The plan is that this will work for all the disadvantaged people. So we're working on it now. I spoke to Co-op yesterday. They had about 17 employers who had already reached out to them and said, we want to donate levy, we want to find out more. So the plan will be the big stakeholders will be the big employers donating the levy, maybe some of the small businesses who'd love to benefit from a smart apprentice, and also the apprentices themselves. So support to them, because we really want to ensure that they're supported as well, probably through mentoring and sponsorship support to ensure that they've got a safe place to go to kind of understand and navigate some of the challenges that we know happen in the workplace. And then some questions for you to think about. So some of the things for practical action. So what kind of practical things can an employer do, which doesn't cost a lot of money, but actually will get you ready not only to be more inclusive as an employer, but actually for procurement opportunities. I know the government now are asking, employers who want to kind of do business with them to demonstrate their commitment to inclusion. So this will help on that front as well. So some of the things to think about. So one of the things we're big advocates of is mentoring. The evidence shows us from these big race of work surveys that it's really highly valued by ethnic minority young people, and actually those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. I designed one of these circles, kind of modules in 2013, because I was raised on a housing estate. I know what it's like to not have any connections, anything. My parents came from, both of them were immigrants from Jamaica, raised on a housing estate, went to a comprehensive with lots of other white working class young people. So I know that the social mobility issue is an issue as much as ethnicity. And two-way mentoring really does help, where the leader gets to mentor somebody from a different background, really gets to hear their experience, and that person gets the benefit from them. I think leaders being inclusive, so making sure, one of the things that talks about, when you're kind of giving out opportunities, thinking across the board, making sure that everyone's getting a chance to shine. And if you're praising people, you're really trying to do that in a balanced way across the organization. I think some other practical things you can do is being explicit about welcoming diverse candidates. So in your applications, or if you advertise the job, you just put that liner: we welcome applications from people from all different backgrounds. So simple wording like that can make a lot of difference. And then encouraging feedback from new hires. When people join your organization, ask them what it's like working here, how is everything going? That will help you with retention. And it will also help you understand from somebody with a fresh perspective what things that you might want to change in the organisation, or things are really working well. So it can reinforce that as well. And then also you can think about a code of, I would say, create a code of conduct with your values. So something that sets out who you are as an organisation, what kind of values you have, what kind of behaviours you want people to to encourage people to have, because that document will come in very handy as if you want to go for any bids or whatever to say this is who we are. But also when you hire new people, you can just say, can you read through that please, so that new people coming into the organisation, you know, are going to be aligned to what you believe and help to enhance the culture, not ruin it, what you're trying to foster. And then finally, the other one I've got here is, you know, make sure you accurately attribute credit for good ideas and good work, because that's the key one, I think, to progression. It's really important. So that I think is a real key thing. So these things, I don't think they cost any much money, but I think they will all be useful and effective. And then finally, as far as the slides presentations, I want to share some things. So I talked about the Race and Work survey that opens on the 22nd of March. And this is for individuals, so employees, we want employees across the UK. We want people up north to fill it out so we can get a good map of the UK representation and do some fact sheets and insight sheets by location. And this is an experience, you know, and YouGov are running it with us, and it's just some questions about what is it like at work. We're going to add some questions about furlough and COVID and a little bit about allyship. And then we've got the mental health toolkit that I talked about. That's going to be launched on the 23rd of March. And then we'll do a guide for managers in June. And then this circle of opportunity, the plan is to kind of launch full blown in April. But I do have an email address that I think I'll share for anybody if they're already interested in. Gosh, I really would like to find out about that opportunity. And then we're going to launch the report in October. So those are the slides that I'm sharing today. And I want to give a few minutes before we go into the panel, if anybody has got any questions on anything that I have said.
Sandra, yes, there is one question already. Could you clarify what two-way mentoring is?
Yes.
Please?
Okay, so this is what you will hear it called is reverse mentoring, reciprocal mentoring, mutual mentoring, two-way mentoring. And what it is, it's where the leader is mentored by somebody from a different background. So if you do it, and it works across all protected characteristics. So it could be a young person mentoring an older person. Are we allowed to say older? Would it be mature? It can be somebody from a different ethnicity talking to somebody from a different background, or a woman mentoring a man, or, you know, it's usually the men that need the mentoring. I'm sorry, I know that's totally non-PC because men tend to be the leaders. But what it does, it helps the leader gain the perspective and realize it is different. And some of the challenges that may be occurring from, you know, people working in their organization. And then the person actually, the other way, the reason why two-way, the individual also benefits from that leader's experience about what they've been through and potentially challenge them when they think, oh, I can't bother to go for that. They might say, well, actually, sharing, you know, leaders sharing their story can also inspire that person. So it is and we have got a one-pager actually on our website somewhere, if you can find it, that says what is reverse mentoring. So it's just that little kind of tip around, and it's about scheduling, you know, I don't know, conversations every 6 weeks. There's usually kind of that you set up the ground rules and say, you know, everyone's allowed to share. But what it does, it kind of helps to build professional connections and friendships in the organization and better understanding on both sides, but particularly with leaders who are often at the top of the tree, right? So it's not saying that they didn't have any challenges, but they are up there, right? So sometimes, particularly if they've glided up there, they think, what's the matter with everybody? Just apply if you want a job, you know, just go for it. But actually, when they hear from somebody who's got actually maybe not all the connections that they had and all the networks and all the kind of pals or whatever in the right places. So that's what the two-way mentoring piece is. Any other questions?
There is another question, and I'm filtering these questions so that they're appropriate for what you're currently talking about. So I am letting people know that some questions will be asked in the question and answer, and I'm noting them down.
Okay. I can see one about the power imbalance. Can I just continue?
Yes, yeah, the power imbalance. Okay. You see that one?
Yeah, what you do, you set it out in the design. So at the beginning, you set the ground rules. This is about this person. We're going to value both contribution, you know, set the ground rules. So, and to be honest, majority, I mean, I've never heard a senior leader who's entered into a reverse mentoring saying that was awful. I'm not saying that there may be the odd person, but most of them find it so valuable. It's just like an amazing insight and an aha moment. And because many of them are senior leaders, they know they've got power to change it. Particularly if it's certain things in their organization, they think, what is this? This doesn't even make any sense. And I know if it wasn't for me, I was reverse mentored. It didn't have a name in those days, but that's what it was. It was sharing my experience with a very senior person in government. And, ultimately what they did was open some doors for me behind my back. I didn't answer them. They started opening doors because they're like, why is Sandra down there? She should be higher up than this. And as they say, the rest is history, right? So that element of that two-way mutual mentoring is helpful for both sides. And then as somebody trying to navigate up the organization, some of these, things that aren't known, the mentor can be really helpful to kind of help you navigate, understand some of what's going on. And also I think it helps people to feel connected to the organization. And then someone's asked my thoughts on bias in recruitment. So look, you'll have seen stuff in the headlines, and some people saying unconscious bias is rubbish, etc., etc. I believe it does exist. There have been mystery shops done by DWP and lots of other organizations that show if your name sounds Muslim or African, you have to fill out more applications. We know that, as I say, I've shared the Race at Work survey data showing specifically, which was a shocker to me when we unearthed the data, 33% of Black people feeling like it's in the way. But I've also done a lot of recruitment myself and know that we've got to stick to the criteria. And what happens is if you don't, and also one of the things we really encourage is diversity on the selection panel. So what kind of things can you do to kind of, I suppose, mitigate that? What some employers are doing are just taking away CVs completely, or taking out anything that can kind of identify somebody. But I still say that only works in part, because when I turn up, for example, I'm still going to be Black, right? Even if we've hidden everything. I think there's also bits around tracking what happens at each stage, because sometimes you might think, why is no one getting through? Well, actually, maybe they do apply, but they don't get past your SIFT process, or they don't get past your interview process. So it's about really, application should be a straight line, as far as consistency. So it does exist. And some employers, and I think when you're going to, the diversity on the panel works, but also it's always useful every time you restate, you're going to have that conversation, you need to restate, this is good for our business, we need it for our customers, for our clients, for, financial health, it's that reinforcing that this really matters. So I think, it does matter. And I see another one, the ethnicities, yeah.
There is a question that's come privately that asks, how do you measure success, Sandra? So if that's the right word, how does a company say, yes, we are doing what we should be doing?
One of the things, so some of the things, number one, really encourage employees to declare their ethnicity. And there are kind of standard forms, use the census categories, at least everyone understands that. Yeah, so I'm sure you could just Google onto the internet and find a kind of monitoring form, because a lot of local authorities and organizations do it. That's one. I think the other one is around surveys. So if you're a bigger organization, you can do pulse surveys or employee surveys and put questions in there. Do I feel included? I feel like I belong in this organization. I believe this, my manager values me. And look at the results and see who's saying yes to that. And if you're small, then one-to-one conversations, yeah? So you can have one-to-one check-ins with people and find out there's some key questions, and you ask all the same questions to everybody, and then you can get a picture of if this is this really working? And, one of the measures will be who's, as people flow through your organization, who gets to the top, who gets stuck. Does that represent, what kind of Sheffield in this case, what does that look like? And so that element of those are kind of some of the measurements that you can use. So surveys to check and look at the comments as well, what people are saying. And also not only looking for, negative, you're looking for good things too. There may be some areas where it's really good over there, what's going on. So you could take the learning from the good as well as the challenging areas. And so, yeah, when I said, so this bit about, monitoring ethnicity, so that's how you know, by actually asking the question from the beginning, you can track it as it goes. And I think there won't be, okay, so.
There is one very random question. I've got to ask.
That is so funny.
Everybody.
About if I'm a singer.
I'm actually a singer. Is this true?
Well, there's a country singer. There's a country something Sandra Kerr, but you'd have to put Sandra Kerr CBE to get me, or Sandra Kerr OBE. I actually have too long story. But there is a woman who's a country folk singer. That's not me. But I used to sing in my choir. I could do a few lines for you. But maybe later, if you're a really good audience. But yes, I can sing, but I don't sing professionally. It comes up as a folk singer. You have to put CBE or OB next to me to get me.
Great. So do you want to move us on to the next part of the presentation, Sandra?
Yes, we're up to the panel now, aren't we? So let's invite our wonderful panel here. So we have Charlotte Delaney from Owen Mitchell. Charlotte, where are you?
I'm here.
Yes, so you've got lovely Charlotte. Cam Spillman from the founder and managing director of at Paper. Cam, where are you?
Hello.
Fabulous, and you must share that thing that you shared with us before. He's got some practical good stuff that he's been doing there. And Sunita Singhal from DWP.
I'm here.
I saw you. Fabulous. Right, so we're going to have a good panel discussion, and we've got Rachel White, who was here first from Henry Boot. Where are you?
Hi.
Morning. Hey, Rachel. Okay, so great panel. Let's get them talking this morning, because there's a real opportunity to hear from panelists telling us about what they're doing in their organisation. So, Charlotte, can you start? Just introduce yourself and just kind of some key things that Owen Mitchell are doing right now. Thank you, Charlotte.
Yep. Hi, nice to meet you all. I'm Diversity Inclusion Manager at Owen Mitchell. Started in role in January, so please bear that in mind. And previously worked in local government and higher education. So I suppose some of the key things that would be useful to explain a little bit about where we are on the journey, because none of us are at the end goal. I don't think we ever will be. So for us, as a firm, we've got quite a strong heritage of being a client-centred organisation. So we say we have an expert hand, human touch, and so from that side of it, we pride ourselves on understanding people and recognising everyone's situation different. So that's sort of where we're coming from. And that translates into what we expect from our colleagues. So being supportive, valuing people for who they are, what they bring, pushing boundaries. What that's meant is, in terms of where we are on our diversity inclusion journey, we've had some really great networks. And we've had networks, employee networks around LGBT+, gender, race, disability, social mobility, and more recently one on generations, which is looking at issues affecting our age diverse workforce. Some are more established than others, but what they've been is a real key driver for our diversity inclusion journey here. Some areas are further ahead because the networks have been going for longer, so gender and sexual orientation. Others, we're really trying to understand what the challenges are and starting to work through those. What that's meant is we've probably got a lot of pockets of really good practice and some great initiatives. And we've got great foundations because we've got a leadership that are on board. It sort of connects with our values. But what we're now looking to move to is how we integrate that into everything that we do, integrating diversity inclusion into everything we do. So just to sort of explain what I mean by that, I suppose, is at the moment we're looking at a lot of our policies, and one of them in particular, we've brought together all of our separate policies, so maternity leave, paternity leave, shared parental leave, all of them into one family leave policy. That's enabled us to have an inclusive policy, because not everyone falls into a classic male-female relationship with kids, and so we're able to change the language so that people can see that that policy relates to them, that policy affects them, benefits them. So we started to do that, but what we're now looking at doing is how we can make our, rather than individually looking at that policy and trying to work out what do we need to do with that, start to build it into our policy policy development and review stage, so that whenever we look at any of our policies, we look at what the experience of all our colleagues are, so that and how we can make that inclusive by default. So really trying to engage with all the different audiences that we need to engage with. Similarly, just recently we've got a partnership with University of Bristol's Law School around family law. So we provide family law services. What we're now looking at doing is providing inclusive resources for the LGBT plus community. So looking at our service and making the service that we already offer more inclusive by developing the resources that are needed. We're doing that again, it's that pockets of good practice. We're doing that on different areas where it's been highlighted as an issue. Now what we need to do is look at how we do that across everything and make all our services inclusive. So a couple of things on sort of what works. I suppose one big area where we've probably made big movements are around being more flexible and support and recognising that one size doesn't fit all. So prior to the pandemic, we were already adopting a more flexible working approach, providing greater flexibility for when people worked, using case studies internally and externally to show how people work more agile and more flexibly with us. Now, the sort of driver for that is about 70% of our workforce is female. So when 70% of your workforce is female, you can't really ignore gender when you're looking at how you do things and what you're doing. And so again, it's about sort of, we've done some listening with our colleagues, which I'd say is a really key area to work on. We've done some listening and identified where there's inconsistencies with how we do things around flexible working, where there's concerns around people returning from maternity leave, for example, concerns about applying for flexible working. And that's led to improvements. So we have a family leave portal now, which provides all the tools that are needed for those going off on maternity, parental leave. And so we can, by listening to them, we're able to identify what are the gaps and where are our issues and what can we do more of. But having that sort of flexible approach and not thinking that one size fits all. One thing I would say is quite often, I can't remember what the phrase is, I think it's a rising tide floats many boats. Quite often things that you will do for one particular diversity group will end up benefiting others, because once you start to have a more flexible approach, then you can accommodate more a more diverse group.
Thanks, Charlotte. That's really helpful. So I want to bring in, because there's a question here coming up. So thank you for that. A lot going on at Irving Whitchell, values, employee networks, flexibility, integration, listening, looking at staff. One of the questions coming up is about customers. So the rest of the panel, as we come to you, anything that you're doing with customers that's going to be of interest. Can we ask Cam, Cam Spillman, can you come and, there you are, Cam. Please introduce yourself and tell us about what you're doing in your organisation.
Hi everyone, I'm Cam. I'm the Managing Director of Paper, which is a research and design studio. We create services mainly for government and private sector clients like Co-op and stuff. And we work in the digital sector. Just raise that at the start, because the digital sector is a right mess in terms of diversity from ethnicity and gender. So we recognise that quite early on, and I guess we're a small business, and there's only 8 people at Paper. So when we look at the problems, it can be quite overwhelming. And I thought it might be interesting to share like how we're trying to sort of tackle one problem at a time. The first thing that we came across when we were trying to build our team in recruitment was we published a job advert for a role, and the applicants for the job, I think there was 18 applicants initially, and only 2 of them weren't men. So we could see there was a problem straight away. And the way we work is to do research. So we decided to pause our recruitment, and we consulted with different organisations, went to the fantastic Innovate Her in Manchester, Sheffield Women in Tech, and Pregnant and Screwed. And we basically just took our recruitment process and asked for criticism and tried to figure out how we could iterate it and improve it. We ended up publishing a new job description called The Job with No Name, and that achieved parity in terms of applicants. With our other hat on from a research point of view, it's obviously crucial when you're doing research to understand the needs of people who might use the services we design, to make sure that we're recruiting a diverse sample of people. And again, we come across challenges, and we try and manage each one as we go. Most recently, we've been doing research with people who have experienced misogyny online, and we were recruiting publicly for that, and we wanted to be inclusive in our recruitment. But that attracted, it's called dogpiling, where a group of people find you on social media and shared their views about our inclusive language. So they were sort of an anti-trans group. But we'd recently had some training, so weirdly enough, some anti-racism training with Dr. Muna Abdi, who's amazing, by the way, if anyone is looking for help. She's fantastic, and she was training us anti-racism, but the thing that she taught us, one of the things she taught us was about confidence in our values, and that was really helpful. So when we experienced that sort of pile on Twitter, our first thought was don't feed the trolls, go quiet. But actually, when we reflected on what we'd been taught, it gave us the confidence. I think Joda was talking about that at the start. The big thing for us, at least, has been building the confidence to speak up for our values and have a go at being part of the conversation, and knowing that we're going to get some of it wrong. So yeah, there's a couple of recent examples.
Thanks, Cam. That's really helpful. So really, I love the talking to the stakeholders about the advert to say, hello, does this work, and taking on board their comments. Thank you for that, Cam. Rachel from Henry Boot, where are you, Rachel? Yes.
I'm here.
Right,
I'm next to you on my screen, Sandra, but next to you on your screen.
No, you're not. So, you're below me.
Just wanted to tell a few people, tell you all about our business really and where we are on our journey. So for those of you that don't know, Henry Boot is a group of companies. We're headquartered in Sheffield, but we've got a network of UK offices, and we work primarily in the property, real estate and construction space, and we have about 500 employees. It struck me this morning when I was just thinking about what to say in advance of this meeting, that probably about a year ago I attended a very similar forum, which was organised by Sheffield Business Together, and was probably my last foray into proper external seeing people in a business context and stuff, because I think it was at the beginning of March, so it was just before the last lockdown, but it was really well attended in person. So to me that just shows the wealth of desire to work in this space and to move things forward and shift things forward. So it's great to see so many people on the screen today. So where are we at Henry Boot? So about 2017 we commissioned some work around our vision, values, and what our purpose was, because we've got 5 operating businesses that were all working in silos, but we're all linked, as I say, in the sector that they worked in, but they were all doing things independently, all doing great stuff, but all doing it independently. And we decided that there was much more to be gained by working collaboratively and working together. So we came together, did some work on our culture, reshaped our vision, our values, and our strategy. And that took probably about the best part of a year and a half. And then to embed it, it took us up to 2019. When we got to 2019, one of the biggest areas that we were looking at was our about diversity and inclusion, and a push for modernisation within our group on the back of the shift of our workplace culture. If I just give you an idea, because of the nature of the sector that we work in, our gender imbalance, I think it's important to use that phrase, imbalance rather than balance, because it's not. We've currently got 77% of our workforce is male and 23% is female, which is obviously not indicative of the gender balance across the UK, and certainly is not reflective of the communities in which we operate and we work in. If I tell you that the majority of that 77% of males are also white and British, that gives you an idea of where we're coming from. And albeit that is really quite stark, I think it's also reflective of the sector that we work in. So, you know, we've been speaking to other people that work in our sector, and, you know, these are the struggles that we've all got at this moment in time. So what did we do about it? We commissioned some external research, and we asked an external research company to come in and speak to our people, our leaders, etc. Because there's only so often that you can feel like you're pushing water uphill. And oh, here's Rachel again talking about all this stuff that she thinks wrong with our business. Actually, you know, external validation is really a key part of getting your message across if you feel that you are pushing against a closed door. So we did our external research. Didn't tell me anything I didn't know, to be quite honest, but it was great to have that validation. And so on the back of that, we have formed a diversity and inclusion steering group. We've got a new CEO that joined us on the 1st of January 2020. So can you imagine what a year he's had in post? I don't think a pandemic was in his first 90 days, but you know, we've managed to get our way through it. But he is very much on board with diversity and inclusion and shifting that forward. So he sponsors the diversity and inclusion steering group. I lead on that. We had to obviously postpone a lot of what we were planning on doing because business survival became the key for the majority of 2020. But we managed to reform and re-get together in September of last year, and the diversity and inclusion steering group have just this last week finished polishing our diversity and inclusion strategy and our diversity and inclusion delivery plan for 2021. So we will be launching that to the business in March, which is next week.
Wow,
so we're very, I'm really chuffed to have got to this point, because it's felt like it's been a long time coming, but there's a real groundswell within our business that this is the right thing to do. Not just because, you know, morally it's correct, but commercially there's all the statistics that you can shake a stick at that says, you know, that more diverse businesses, whether that's diversity around gender, ethnicity, social mobility, that's a big thing for me, Sandra, as well, being somebody that grew up in a working class ex-pit village and remembers the miners' strikes and all of those sorts of things. You know, I've done well for myself, you know, but I've earned it and I've worked for it, you know, and I want to share that story with people, to show people that if you can see it, you can be it. You know, and so that's where we are with our journey. And I'm sorry I'm dead enthusiastic, but it's great to see so many people share our story and hopefully take people on our journey with us, because what we want to do is collaborate with people within Sheffield, within the Sheffield City region, because we're all in the same boat. You know, and we'll all come together, because if we can come together as a collaborative, we've got so much more influence and opportunity to share and to develop.
Thanks very much, Rachel. And interesting you talk about, you know, if you can see it, you can be it. One of the challenges of me growing up, there weren't any Black people, you know, to see. So this is why we're really big advocates for role models. You know, how do you inspire? I remember having to go abroad to look for role models, but we don't want that. We want people to be able to find Brits who they can inspire, to all the young people of any background can see people. If they can see local heroes, that's great too. So over to Sunita, which is a nice segue actually into Sunita, who's the DWP lead on particular mentoring circles. She's kind of my partner in crime. We work collaboratively on a huge project with 20 locations in 2018. It's time flies, right? So Sunita, over to you. Sharing what DWP are doing on this. Oh, can't hear you, Sunita. You're talking. Can anybody hear Sunita? I'm not getting any sound. And everyone, we can't hear you, Sunita. And she did on the test, she was speaking really clearly on the test. We can't hear you. She's talking, but we can't hear anything yet. I don't know what's going on there. So, Sunita, we'll try and get back to you, but the DWP mentoring circles.
We have got quite a few questions, Sandra, if you'd like a question.
Okay, and Sunita, Sunita, why don't you try leaving and coming back in? That's what I find sometimes works when your sound goes, just come out and go back in. So if there are questions, happy to talk about, yes, there are a few questions actually. Yeah,
right, so I'll start from the top. I've got 3 pages, so we're gonna have to make
Oh, right, go ahead, Joe. We can, let's go into that bit then, go on.
So number 1, what is the preferred term to BAME? BAME.
Okay, so evidence-wise, because I ran that big survey I told you about that we're going to run again. I asked the question, what terminology? Trust me, this conversation has been raging for years. ethnic minority of the ones that exist came out first. So that came out, more people said they preferred that one. The next in the queue was BAME, but like I said, that's just gone down the drain now. It's seen as trying to mask kind of, inclusion of Black people. Black and minority ethnic was third, and people of colour was fourth. So based on it, but remember, 1 in 3 of people said, I don't really care. Some people don't mind as long as we're working on it together. And you only need it for collective discussion or for writing about it. You don't really need the terminology for anything else. Sorry, Joda.
So when we're talking about that, do you think it's because people are actually saying the word BAME rather than saying Black and minority ethnic?
I mean, look, this is, I'll tell you what it is. I think, yeah, because that's potentially a solution, but I tell you what happened. There was an interview with a certain minister on television, and they were asked, are there any Black cabinet ministers? And he said, I don't know, but we've got some BAME ones. And he started listing the Asian ones. And it really just, I mean, it was already, there was a bit of a movement before, but it just exploded then. People were like, no, you're using it to cover up the fact that there aren't no Black people. And we know, we did a Windrush Day kind of infographic that shows, if you look at Black representation in judiciary, education, police, I mean, you name it, business, it's not even 2%, when the Black representation in the UK is over 3%.
Okay.
So it's more like 1%. So yeah, but you can spell it out. That's an alternative, Black, Asian, minority, ethnic, to show you're not trying to cover up anything.
Great stuff, thank you. So question number 2, we talk about diversity, but how do we make it inclusive for more women, as well as the Black and minority ethnic groups and LGBTQ and all other groups?
Right, so as far as women, can I just say, look, most employers we find do gender first, actually, because it's easy to do, because everybody has to declare their gender when they join a workplace. But also, there is that element of looking at people. Remember, I'm a woman, I'm Black, I'm older, that's 3 potential characteristics. You know, most people have got multiple ones. When we put our stuff out, we ask employers to think, particularly with the downturn, furlough, and you've heard, like Charlotte was talking about some of the things that Erwin Mitchell about, you know, returners, making sure you're keeping in touch, making sure when we look at even gender pay gap reporting came out first, because we're still campaigning to get ethnicity pay gap reporting introduced. So what we find is employers are doing a lot on that flexible working, but not only for women. I think flexible working is just for people. I mean, there are lots of people who don't have children, just want to have a life. Go and do some, whatever, go and walk in the garden at a certain time of the day. So I think the more we can make things inclusive and people realize, oh, it's not just about women again, it's actually for everybody. So who was it? Was it Charlotte? Somebody said that when you do it for gender, I think it was Charlotte, it works for other groups. So I think that's really important. And I hope that was Charlotte, because I don't like giving credit for other people. Was it you, Charlotte? Smile at me if it's you.
I was just going to add to that, sort of thinking what Hamid said as well about what they've done with the job descriptions and things. One thing that has been found is that if you change your language to make it more inclusive for gender, it doesn't put, for women, it doesn't put off men applying. And so the more things we can do in terms of changing some of our language so that it's more inclusive, making our the way we do things more flexible, so that there are, you know, we're not restricting people that you've got to work in this certain way, because that might not help with their family and their backgrounds. It's going to benefit, it may benefit some women, but it's also going to benefit more people by just having that more flexible approach and opening up by changing the language to make it less male orientated, if you like. You're opening it up to other people who might see themselves differently, or might be put off by some words because they'll feel like that's not them. They may be a little more introverted, or various different things. So usually you find the improvements that you make to make it more open for women actually benefit disabled groups or all sorts of different groups.
And I think if you're going to do flexibility, for example, so, you know, you hear about talking about when we open up, the future, I think, is going to be a blended bit, because people have got into a new rhythm, got their lives sorted out this way. And I just think we just need to focus on the outputs. So it doesn't matter, male, female, anybody who wants to do flexibility, as long as they're delivering for the organisation, I don't see what the problem is. I just think you just need to let people have a life, do what they need to do, as long as they're delivering professional services to whoever the clients are, and they're all happy. Who cares if we're watching Columbo while we're sending emails or whatever it is? Because no one can't tell, can they? Exactly. So, or maybe more likely something on Netflix, which I shall not name, but everyone's probably been watching.
I just wanted to add to that, and this might throw the cat amongst the pigeons a little bit, but that's Joda, that's me all over. So I'm just going to say it.
You say.
I can see why sometimes, and I feel like I'm just going to have to turn my screen off after I've said this. I can see why sometimes employers look at somebody like me as a woman in her 30s and are hesitant to recruit them because I'm an employer and I have had women come for jobs, start the job, and then leave to have children and spend all the time on maternity. And I've done it because I'm an employer and I've been an employee. So I can understand sometimes as an employer why somebody would think, oh, there's a good chance that a woman of this age is possibly going to spend more time away from work or have those kind of last minute phone in sicks and all those things because you've got children and that level of flexibility that they're not always used to. What I do think, though, is that this last 12 months of employers having to do flexible working and having to allow people to work from home, I'm hoping that the last 12 months will have brought people round to understanding that flexible working doesn't always mean that they aren't working. But as an employer and as a mum in her 30s, I can understand why often people are reluctant and they think, oh, there's a good chance that she's not going to be here all the time and she's going to have last minute issues.
I mean, can I just jump in? I mean, and open to the rest of the panel to comment, but I just think the more flexibility you give people, the more they can just get on with their lives.
Yeah.
You know, it's some of this, you know, presenteeism that exists. I think there's a TEC report that came out in January, 71% of women who asked for furlough. So, you know, when they suddenly shut the schools and that means, oh my God, you know, the kids are at home, their employer said no. So I'd like to think that everyone's going to suddenly kind of behave themselves and get an epiphany, but maybe not. But I think Sandra is definitely recognizing that actually there are benefits to increasing flexibility, even if it's like those people who work flexibly would have energy to go and boost the nighttime economy because they won't be so tired from traveling all day. So, you know, it's how can we put those messages that really benefit, realize that, look, this is good for everybody. This is not just helping out women. Rachel, you're unmuted. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I was just going to come in and just say, you know, we had this issue within our business where, you know, obviously because of our gender inequality, that, you know, most men weren't actually caring for their children. It was falling to their wives and stuff. But I think the last 12 months have shown us that, you know, there's a lot more flexibility that's required by everybody. So including people such as myself, like you say, Sandra, I don't have kids, but, you know, I've got a life and there's other stuff. I've got a grandma that I look after and stuff. Exactly. And things. I'd love to spend more time with her and things. You know, so I think it's opened the opportunity for us to do something quite radical going forward. But what I did, because it was what I've been doing over the past 2 or 3 years, because obviously it's in my control, is just about everybody within my HR team work either compressed hours, part-time, you know, all sorts of wild and wacky sort of working patterns, and not made a song and dance about it, but have then used it to say to people when they've said, well, it can't possibly be a part-time job. Right, well, the payroll manager, he works compressed hours and does, you know, finishes at 3 o'clock 2 days. Do you get paid every month? Yeah. Do you have any problems with payroll? No. Well, there you go then. It's the art of the possible. And sometimes, again, it's the seeing and being. You've got to show that it can be done for people to believe that it's possible. But I think this last 12 months is really going to shift that forward hugely. And we've got to be on it, because that's what people will be wanting. People aren't going to be looking for a 9 to 5, 5-day a week job anymore. They want the best of both worlds.
Brilliant. So there is one question, and this is around flexibility, which is why I'm going to ask it. So somebody's asked, are there groups that flexibility might be a disadvantage for? For example, people living with a large family or caring responsibilities, now losing their space for concentration or independence. How do companies support these people?
I mean, I think, can I jump in here? I mean, I you know, 'cause obviously I've been doing a lot of thinking about this. I think that the future is blended. So the ones that want to get out and go back into the office and can't wait to go there need to be free to do that. Those who've got a different rhythm and want to sort out their lives in a different way should be free to do that as well. That will probably take pressure off the transport systems because, you know, can you see everybody wanting to kind of go back and try crowded transport anytime soon, particularly with health crisis themselves. They're going to be a bit more, you know, careful maybe than others who are like, I don't know why we're in lockdown, I haven't felt any kind of impact of this. So I think it really is about, if there's a focus on outputs, that this is about customer client delivery, as long as that's not disrupted, it is going to take some adult behavior. Because I don't know why people always think that if you let people, you know, everyone thinks they're the only ones, like I would never, you know, I'm working at home, but why do you believe that everybody else is just going to faff about? Particularly if you've got long-term, you know, good employers who turned up every day and did great work. I mean, what's the problem? You know, I just think focus on the outputs and let people have a life, because, you know, let's also, the other thing I think bubbling under the surface, we haven't touched here so much, is the mental health. All of this lockdown, all of this, you know, what is that? So I just think the more people don't have to be anxious and worry about being able to manage their lives and do their jobs, the better. So I think those who want to get them out as quick as possible, but those who've got a new rhythm and like, you know what, I've got other bits of my life that I'm managing, should be able to do that as well.
Has anybody else got a question that they would like to ask before I continue with questions that I'm taking from the chat? No, cool. Right, I'm going to move us on there onto another question. This is really interesting, this one. So if somebody is disabled, when they apply for a job, they can use the 2-tick system, which means that they meet a minimum requirement and they will get an interview. Is there something around doing this to proactively recruit?
I mean, I remember having 2-tick when I used to work for civil service, and I remember when the 2-ticks is established, to put that on, you know, people encourage employers to put it on their kind of material on their website to show that they are kind of welcoming disabled people. Is the question talking about, could we do this for ethnicity too? I don't know. I think if you sign the Race at Work Charter, you can put that on there, because it's interesting. Our leadership team, one of them, he said his son said to him, Dad, do you know Sandra Kerr? So he sits on our race leadership team, and he said, I do actually. And she goes, have you signed the Race at Work Charter? So he was saying it's really strange with a young person who'd obviously come across the charter, his own son, and was like, oh, he heard about it at an event when they were saying, look for employers who sign a charter, for employers who potentially could be interested in, you know, welcoming applications. So I think what you can display is where you are, you know, anything that you've publicly kind of, oh, just put the comment, we welcome applications from people from diverse backgrounds, because that again sends a message enough to say, all right, let me try applying to you, particularly with young people entering the marketplace. And Joda, I don't know if you noticed, I just saw a note from Sunita that she's back on. So
Brilliant.
Some sound problems. So Sunita, where are you?
Are you there?
I'm here, thank you. Yes.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
Yes,
Good morning, everybody. Apologies for what happened. Our lovely DWP computer systems don't allow us to use Zoom, so I thought I'd got in and I was really excited, but obviously the sound didn't work, so I had to go and use my personal mobile now. But hey-oh, here I am. Really delighted. And as Sandra said, she led on the mentoring circle. She designed them in 2013 and then piloted one in Brixton in 2014, which was so hugely successful with young people. I think there were about 100 young people that participated, with 68% of those young people moving into work within 6 months of the mentoring circles. So what is a mentoring circle? Mentoring circle is an action learning set. It's about working together with young people, sharing their experiences, giving them knowledge, understanding of about the labour market, but also tackling some of the issues that they may have together. It's about, and it's about all the things that you've been talking about this morning. This is a practical way of actually getting involved. It's a practical way of you attracting and recruiting those really talented people within your communities. And it's about understanding the challenges, barriers faced by BAME young people or any diverse groups really that you're trying to attract. And it's making your organizations more representative of the communities that you serve. So it's a really practical way of getting involved and doing something within the communities that you work and live in. Mentoring circles are the way we were delivering back in 2018 and 2019 were about 3 sessions. So it was about 6 hours of an employer's time, 6 hours of a young person's time, and helping them to understand and impart knowledge around employability skills, working with them around their CVs, their application forms, getting them to understand what it is, what does the landscape look like in terms of the labour market. What we found was that some young people really didn't understand things, practical things like, I want a job in finance, and they would think, oh, I need to apply for a bank. But a lot of the organizations that are here today, this morning, you will have finance departments. They just never thought about it. They never thought about things like, you know, they always see it as a job, as a vacancy being advertised. They didn't think about traineeships, apprenticeships, work experience, and all the other things that are available, you know, mentoring, etc. They just didn't think there was an opportunity there. So it's a practical way of you getting involved and showing that, you know, you really want to change your workforce. So it was 6 hours over a 3-week period, and it was about employability skills. It was about understanding challenges and barriers they faced. And the last session was held at the employer's premises. So the employers did mock interviews and gave them some knowledge about what's the way to approach interviews. Some young people had never, ever been in front of an employer, which was quite shocking, really. They were they were 24 years old and had applied for 50, 60 jobs, but never had an interview. And this was a way of the employers understanding some of the challenges and barriers the young people faced as well. When I was sitting, one of the sessions that was held was by KPMG at Canary Wharf. And I remember sitting in the reception area waiting for young people to arrive. And you could see the hesitancy of the young people as they approached the reception area, the main doors, not even the reception, the main doors. And they were like, oh God, can I go in here? Am I going to be able to fit in here? Do I belong here? They walked up to the reception area, then they were taken upstairs. They had their mock interviews, and honest to God, all of them stayed there for 2 to 3 hours after the session finished. And they were all asking KPMG people, I want to work here. How can I find a job? What can I do? Tell me about all the opportunities you have here. So what I found was that young people really wanted to work in a lot of the organizations they think they could never work in. And this was an opportunity to open your doors and actually get involved with the young people. For me, mentoring circles was about raising aspirations. It was about creating a can-do approach. It was inspiring young people. It was about imparting knowledge and about the labour market. It was about you people, employers, connecting to the young people. And more importantly, it was about the reverse mentoring. So although the employers were mentoring young people, there was a huge opportunity for the young people, for the employers to understand some of the barriers and challenges that the young people faced. I remember Sandra coming to a mentoring circle in Fujitsu in Manchester that we ran. And in that session, we had about 26 young people across Manchester. They were all BAME young people. 3 of them had been homeless or were still living in hostels. And when the event finished, the Fujitsu people came up to me and said, you know, we'd never ever thought about recruiting people or reaching out to people that were homeless, but we can't believe the talent that is out here. And we are definitely going to think about how we change the way we recruit and attract, and also, you know, deliver more mentoring circles, connect ourselves to young people. And recently, about 2 weeks ago, they delivered another mentoring circle. And it was exactly the same thing they were saying, that we can't believe the talent we've seen, and we want these people to work in our organization. How are we going to, this is our future talent pipeline. And it's a really practical way of doing it. We're now delivering mentoring circles virtually, so we've had to change the model slightly. But young people tell us that they really like being, you know, involved on a virtual platforms. They like connecting to employers on a virtual platforms. It has worked. Lots of people are still continuing to deliver mentoring circles. And I think what Sandra started has ended up being a program in DWP, which is nationally available to all young people aged 16 to 24. So what a fantastic thing that Sandra started, and it's now part of a mainstream program in DWP. I'm happy to take questions. I know we're running out of time, so I'll keep it short and sweet. We have got people from Sheffield and Barnsley DWP, and I think we've given you contact details. So if you are interested in delivering or getting involved, supporting a mentoring circle, then please get in touch with those colleagues in DWP, and they'll be more than happy to help you.
And can I say, just to endorse Sunita, it's a very simple model, so an employer of any size can participate, because all you need to do is, you know, and you don't have to prepare, because you're just coming with your own application process, your own interview process, and the chance to, and you know, if we ever get out again, which I hope we do, to potentially kind of visit you on site. But yeah, the mentoring model does lend itself to technology. We've got a progression one as well that to see, and that is done online as well, so it works digitally too.
And mentoring does work, because lots of people tell us, even when they're in workplaces, that if they've had a mentor, they've achieved what they set out to do.
Yeah, we found that as well.
Somebody's asked, what is the pathway to access mentoring programs in Sheffield? So,
Joda, thank you for that. We've given you details in the, it should be in the in your pack, with the details of the two people that you can contact. They are DWP colleagues. We have mentoring circles running. If you wanted to run your own mentoring circle, we can support you with that. But if you just message them, they will come back to you and we can pick up a conversation with you. I've also devised an employer framework. So happy to share that if that would help, and we can send it out to everybody who's on this call today.
Great, so thank you, Sunita. We've got a question for Rachel, Henry Boot. So within the types of companies that are around engineering, manufacturing and construction, it's more difficult for flexible working. As far as like the shop floor and shift patterns, have you come across this in construction, Rachel, with the guys on site?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's something that we're really conscious of a business, that we don't have this them and us sort of split with our workforce. Sadly, we have had it during the pandemic, because you know there's a lot of job roles that can be done at home. So you can probably see I'm quite happy at home. There's a lot of people that are still working at home, but we've got a lot of people that have gone out to work every day from the very beginning, you know, and so there has been that bit of a divide that's been created. So we're conscious to not continue that beyond whatever we decide to do when we're allowed to be back at work properly. But I think the thing to look at is about job design and things, you know. So do we have to look and really think that somebody's got to be on site at such and such a time in the morning and leave at such and such a time at night, you know, or be there 5 days a week? You know, we've got people that do work you know, shorter weeks and stuff and things. They've tended to be people that are trickling down into retirement, so are reducing their hours and stuff. But if it works for them, why can't it work for others? So I think it's just about a step change in line managers' behaviour and things like that. You know, become so wedded to this you know, we've got to be at work at such and such a time, that we can't see beyond changing that. And I think, you know, that's part of our journey with our people, you know, that we don't have to have people at work at 8 o'clock in the morning. If people want to come at 7, that's great, and finish at 4, that's brilliant. But if people want to come at 9 and finish at 6, well, do you know what? Commercially, that extends the working day and the amount of people that are at work, you know, so it means that perhaps we might have more productivity rather than less. You know, so there's lots of things to still be ironed out as far as we're concerned in that space, but it's something that we're massively conscious of.
Okay, so thank you, Rachel. I'm keeping my eye on the time, but we've got some more questions, and this is open to all of the panel. So I'd love to hear from you guys. What is your approach to creating more inclusive policies?
I mean, I'm happy to start. Oh, Cam, yay, Cam.
Yeah, after you.
Oh, well, I was going to say, one of the things I always advise employers is get all your employees, you know, engaged as much as possible. When you're looking at a policy, think about your values, get as many voices around the table to comment on what it should look like, because the more that happens, the more likely it's going to actually be able to be brought to life. Your employees are convinced that you mean business with it, and also perspectives that you wouldn't get if you did it on your own in a dark room. So that was all I was going to say. So Cam, over to you. I'm sure you got something more clever than that.
No, I was going to say exactly the same. But I can expand on it a little bit. We try and have as flat a structure as possible at paper, and Urshka is one of our team. She started our how we treat people policy, which is an overarching policy. It covers all aspects. And then we just worked on it iteratively as a team. And when we hit problems where we were like, right, we don't have the lived experience to deal with this part, that's where we went out and we found consultants. We worked with Pregnant Unscrewed on our parental leave policy, Dr. Muna Abdi, who spoke about before, on our anti-racism strategy. But all of these things are all tied to that one policy, and yeah, that was started by the team, and everyone fed into it. I can talk a little bit about the structural change stuff, though, that we were kind of talking about before. We're working with Manchester City Region at the moment on their strategy to help people who have experienced homelessness get back into work or to find work. And so that's in partnership with the Co-op, Balfour BT, and the Manchester Airport Group. And our experience trying to redesign that whole process on there, it is exactly the same. The scale's different, but it's exactly the same. People need permission to write those policies. People need permission to make those changes, and then they will. So we've seen that, you know, line managers, middle management, we've helped them redesign how they do job adverts, how they score interviews, how they try and remove conscious bias or unconscious bias. And then how they, the things that you were talking about, Rachel, as well, about if you have people who've experienced homelessness, how do you create a more flexible workplace where they can go out and spend time with the support groups that they need to as well, that sort of thing. But all of that, I think it just took someone saying, yeah, it's okay to make these changes, go for it. And then it was much easier to create policy and process change, if that helps.
Great stuff. I love I think a lot of things that we need to build as leaders are bottom up anyway, aren't they? I think often, even whilst I was an employee, if something was just thrust from the top down, there's just that element of, you've not even asked my opinion. So it's nice to be heard, isn't it? And you get gaining people's buy-in right from the off, and then they're more likely to share it as well. And they're probably more likely to pull people up if somebody's not doing what they've said that they're going to be doing, what they've said they're going to do, if they've been part of making that policy as well. So that's really interesting.
Just to add to that, what we're doing, so one of the things that we're looking at as part of our delivery plan for this year is we're looking at our family policies. And the easiest thing for me to do as leading the diversity and inclusion steering group and being the head of HR would be for somebody in my team to write that policy. Well, those policies already exist, but we want to refresh them and probably bring them together, a bit like what Charlotte said in terms of having just a family leave, because, you know, how somebody becomes a parent, it's irrelevant what gender they are. You know, so what we've asked, I'm getting the diversity and inclusion steering group to write it, or the people within a part of the steering group to write it, because then it's done from their perspective rather than from an HR perspective. Obviously, we will then make sure it hangs with all the policies and stuff and things. But then what the other thing we will do is we will offer that up to our employee forums to have a look at and see what our employee forums think about it before we then take it to our board. So again, like you say, you know, you're doing the bottom up rather than the top down, and people aren't necessarily always having things done to them. Yeah, you're including them in the process.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. It'd be really interesting to get a legal point of view within this forum. I don't know if anybody has got a legal point of view. Jay, I know you're legal. Is there, from a legal point of view, is there anything that we should be thinking about?
Hi, Jada. Well, funnily enough, I've literally just this second posted a comment on the chat, just saying that, you know, I've been an employment lawyer for more than 25 years, and I still find it really shocking, some of the cases that we're dealing with at the moment, particularly pregnancy and maternity discrimination seems to be big again. Women are discriminated against when it comes to furloughing and unfurloughing, and I've seen that absolutely firsthand. Women of all different levels of seniority, including very senior women, which I think is a real shame. I mean, a lot of the initiatives, you know, and thoughts coming out here are great as preventative measures, but, you know, the reality is that there are always going to be discrimination claims made by people, or not necessarily claims, but, you know, issues with discrimination in the workplace. But often it's by inference and it's implied, and it's very, very difficult to nail because it's not explicit.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm not a big fan. Coming from the background I do, I'm Indian, so like similarly to some of you who have said, you know, I came from no connections at all, and I've had a great career. So I really do my best to try and mentor other people, to be a positive role model. I've seen hundreds of junior lawyers in my time, you know, taking them under my wing, giving them opportunities, set up initiatives. But, you know, you can only do so much. And I think particularly up here in this region, it's still a real problem, you know, and there aren't very many good role models, if I'm honest.
And I think this is going to have to be the last question. Thank you for that, Jane. This is rolling on from your last statement. Is the utopia of achieving total inclusivity achievable in our generation? It feels like the momentum is there. What needs to be the catalyst to drive fundamental change, and from whom? So it's a big question to finish.
Shall I start? You know, I like taking the big questions. Okay, so I think two things. I have to be an optimist and believe that we can get to something better than this. Okay, I think collective action from business, so all businesses committing to some key things, and we're hoping to be able to achieve some of that through this Race at Work survey. What's the evidence telling us? What is the demand from employees as far as action that's needed? And if we can get big employers, the big ones who, you know, are pretty well the big contributors to the economy, etc., who have big supply chains, to commit to action and say to their supply chains, you're going to do it too if you want to continue to do business with us. I think that's one. And also we need political leaders, we need government to actually demonstrate that this matters as well, using their procurement power to say, if you're going to do business with us, you're going to help tackle this infrastructure issue and some of these unemployment disparities and some of these challenges. So I think it's doable if you've got leadership on both business and government together. And of course, you know, I would say that, but I need to be optimistic to do my job. So I actually believe that if we could get those things really mobilized, both saying not only we are doing it, but supply chain, those who want to do business with us do it as well, I think we could get some progress. If you remember the Olympics, how diverse that was, it was built into the design. to say you need to recruit locally, you need to recruit diverse, you need to recruit gender, you need to recruit disability. It was all baked into the design, and look at the result. That's my...
Excellent. Thank you, Sandra. Unfortunately, we are going to have to draw to a close, but I'm just absolutely astonished at the level of engagement. There are still questions coming. I'm getting questions privately. So if you have asked questions and we've been unable to answer them, we will take them away and make sure that you get an email response from one of us. So I do apologise if we've not been able to answer everything. Firstly, I'd like to just thank all the businesses for joining us, because I think this is when we've just been saying about what is it that needs to happen. Open conversations is what needs to happen on a regular basis, in all different forums where people can ask the questions, they can air their concerns, and they can share good practice. So thank you and well done for being a part of that. Thank you to all as guest speakers and our panel. Thank you to the business in the community, Sheffield Business Together and the Department for Works and Pensions. I'm really pleased that our 3 chambers have come together, because that collaboration is absolutely key for building a better future for businesses. I hope that you enjoy your event pack and that you find those really useful. So there's lots of information in there. If I can ask, before you head off, there are 2 things. We have shared with you the link for the next event, which is on the 24th of March, and that pays particular focus to unconscious bias and recruitment and retention. So that's on the 24th of March, and you'll see that that link has been shared by Sheffield Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Sam. And then lastly, if you could stay on the line just to answer some questions really quickly with Sarah McQueen from Sheffield Hallam University, and it's just to inform what support employers need. After the call, there will be some evaluations sent out, so it'd be brilliant if you could give us lots of feedback. Again, be completely open and honest. Anything you like, anything you'd like changing. We aren't going to fall apart and be upset by it. So literally just say what you think, so that we can make the next event as much of a success as I feel this one has been. So I do hope that you will join us in March. And big thanks to everybody. If you can stay on the line for Sarah McQueen, then please do. Otherwise, thank you again for joining us. And I hope you all have a lovely day.
And can I just sing one bar of a song, because someone said Sandra sing something. So I'm going to sing something.
Come on.
Don't worry about a thing, for every little thing, it's gonna be all right. So as you can see, people, I have other options if I don't do this, right?
Yes.
There you go. You're the first group who've done it.
Lovely. Thank you, Sandra.
All right. Thank you.
How do I